So we're learning that the original person, Patricius, you know, the St. Patrick guy, he is a wonderful magician, right? He can just, all these different miracles, he's able to bring horses back to life, cows back to life, make mad cows, you know, mad cows that had died back to life. I don't know if he cured their madness or not, but he was able to bring his, the mad cows that was owned by his aunt back to life. He accidentally, you know, killed these two princesses right after they were baptized, which nobody else, there's no witnesses, so we actually don't know what had happened there. So carrying on, he does all these different, you know, miracles. He wasn't able to save Ithne or Fedlum, right? Fidelm or Ethne or Fidelm were not, try to memorize those names, Ethne and Fidelm, because Ethne and Fidelm, he was not able to resurrect them and save their life. Actually, once he gave them baptisms, they just died, right? They just automatically, they went straight to heaven, and he came across them while they was bathing. So the whole fucking story just seems suspect, you know, all the way around. Then also, he didn't know how to resurrect the native Irish pagans or the Druids or other Irish peoples. Basically, he told them, if you don't convert to Christianity, then you were going to die. You know, it was the Inquisition. It was the Irish Inquisition. That's what St. Patrick represents to Ireland. Patricius, on top of Eagle Mountain, called all the reptiles and the snakes and dragons in Ireland. This is a fable legend of his, right? So you got Patrick. Patricius is on top of Eagle Mountain. He calls all the reptiles, snakes, and dragons in the land of Ireland, and he ordered them over the edge of Eagle Mountain. So you need to get on over the fucking edge of Eagle Mountain, right? And then they did, right? They immediately they jumped over, and this freed all of Ireland from these horrible creatures. So the reptiles, snakes, and dragons were not actually reptiles, snakes, and dragons. They were symbolic of people, and what they were symbolic of were the native peoples. Patricius, the Protestant, killed hundreds, thousands, if not 6 million native Irish pagans, peoples, and Druids. The most badass story about Patricius, this is introduction in how he encounters the Druids, right? They were the ones that enslaved him, so clearly he's going to have, you know, he's going to be pissed off about it. But this is only, he starts out good, right? And like so many heroes, he just turns into a genociding Adolf Hitler, right? So Patricius, a.k.a. Magnus, a.k.a. Maewyn Sucat, was when he went back to Ireland after he escaped from his enslavement from his former Druid priest slave master Milcho. Patricius, just like a mafia boss, goes back to Ireland, and he warns Milcho, who lived on Slimish Mountain, located in County Antrim of modern Northern Ireland, that he better convert to Christianity or else, right? So here's a slave, escaped. Now he's coming back. He's coming back for you, Massa. What you going to do now, Massa? So the Massa, stubborn, slave-owning Druid priest Milcho, didn't convert to Christianity. And since he wouldn't convert to Christianity, Patricius set his mansion and him on fire, and he murdered his former master. Burned him right up. Now, later on, Patricius would write down that, you know, that actually isn't what happened. He would say that the Druid priest had actually set himself on fire, which, what a horrible way to go, right? Committed suicide because Patricius's gruesome reputation had preceded him, and the Druid priest would rather commit suicide than to be overtaken by his former shepherding slave boy. Patricius then spent his last 30 years in pagan Druid Ireland, baptizing pagans, ordaining priests, founding churches, monasteries, and powerful persuasive powers, right? He created 300 to 700 churches. He baptized over 1,200 people in Ireland. Monasticism came to Ireland after Patricius consecrated 350 Protestant bishops, erected 300 to 700 churches, and ordained 5,000 Protestant priests. Ireland fully converted to Christianity within 200 years, and Patricius's Christian conversion supposedly ended slavery, human sacrifice, and most intertribal warfare of the pagans, Druids, and peoples of Ireland. So Christianity comes to Ireland, and everybody's happy, and everything's wonderful, and everything's great and fine. That's total bullshit. Okay, his story is 500, right, 485 AD or whatever. So it's way long time ago, right? Good English there, but it was a long ass time ago. The real value of Patricius's conversion of Ireland to Christianity was the historical record keeping of the of Patricius's Protestant monasteries. Ireland's monasteries copied and preserved as many classical texts they could get their hands on: Roman, Greek, Egyptian, etc. Later, Irish monks okay, so the real value of Patricius' conversion of Ireland to Christianity was the historical record keeping of Patricius' Protestant monasteries. So they would copy and preserve as many classical texts as they could get their hands on: the Roman, Greek, Egyptians, whatever they could get their hands on. Later on, Irish monks returned this knowledge to Europe when they established monasteries in England, Germany, France, Switzerland, and Italy. Ireland survived as the rest of Europe crumbled and collapsed during the Dark Ages. And that's why they say that Ireland's monasteries allowed Western learning to survive the Dark Ages, and then that supposedly saved all of Western civilization. So that's where Patrick's actual value is in history. He was able to save all these historical texts, and since he's saving all the historical texts, why not write some nice things about himself? Even if they're just flat out lies. He's rising people, you know, up from the dead and shit. Horses, cows, even if they're crazy cows, he's like raising crazy cows up from the dead. Giants, right? He's raising giants up, but he's banishing she-beast, and he's killing princesses, and he's killing a shit ton of druids and pagans, including his former master, which was a good thing. But you know, like I said, you get that taste for blood, and you can't stop yourself, right? And then you become Adolf Hitler. So you can start out as Che Guevara, but then you become, you know, Fidel Castro. So Patricius then spent his 30 years in pagan Druid Ireland, and he built this entire fucking system. And they want to say that he had persuasive powers. Well, if his penchant for bloodthirsty vengeance could be seen as persuasive, might be able to give him that. So his relationship with the Druids: Patricius ordered God to kill the arch-Druid Lochru, okay, so Lochru, God listened to Patricius, and he raised Arch-Druid Lochru into the air, and then the Arch-Druid Lochru's head was smashed against the rocks. So Patricius prayed for the Arch-Druid Lochru to be murdered. God went ahead and did that. What that could be symbolic for, I have no idea. Did Patricius kill this man? Is that what he's saying, right? He ordered God, right, an arch-druid, and he smashed his head against the rocks. Like, what are you talking about? This is insane. This is insane that this is actually reported and passed on. Anyways, Patricius also burned 150 Druid books, which is remarkable because the Druids were known to have a verbal history, but they did write stuff down in Greek. So Patricius burned 150 Druid books after he had demonstrated that the Bible could float in water. So when the Druid book sunk and the Bible floated in water, that clearly proved that the Bible was better, and then he set 150 Druid books on fire. Of course, every single reported miracle of Patricius is bullshit. Patricius never stood on Eagle Mountain. He never called up all the reptiles, snakes, and dragons in Ireland and ordered them to jump over Eagle Mountain. All that was bullshit, okay? The reason Ireland has no snakes is because the reptiles and amphibians have never, or at least have not yet, repopulated Ireland since the last ice age, which fossil records prove. So there's no amphibians or reptiles or snakes or dragons, right? I don't remember ever seeing a dragon, right? So St. Patrick banished all the dragons. The fuck are you talking about? Well, there's we'll find out what he's talking about, but we'll talk about the fossil records, okay? So just to make sure you know that I know what I'm talking about, fossil records shows that snakes haven't inhabited Ireland since the last ice age, which was 15,000 years ago. No snakes of any kind are to be met with throughout the whole island. Patricius couldn't have banished the snakes and dragons since post-ice age Ireland never had any. The last glacial period, popularly known as Ice Age, was the most recent glacial period within the current Ice Age, occurring during the last years of the Pleistocene, from approximately 110,000 years ago to 12,000 years ago. Okay, so the last glacial period was how Native Americans was able to cross into America from Siberia over the land bridge during the Ice Ages about 15,000 years ago. That's what we're talking about, the last Ice Ages about 15,000 years ago. So there hasn't been any snakes or reptiles for 15,000 years in Ireland. The snakes that Patricius that Patricius Maewyn Sucat Maginus drove out of Ireland were the Celtic Druidic priests, who had serpents tattooed on their forearms, and the Druids themselves, their followers, and the pagans, and the native Irish peoples. He brought Christianity into Ireland. Well, what happened with all the other people? What happened with the other religions? What happened to the Druids? And were there any other religious people besides them? Anybody not Catholic was pagan, so that could be anybody. What other groups of people were in Ireland before Patrick showed up? So Patricius actually genocided the native Irish, the logical, scientific, smart, autonomous Irish pagans and Druids. St. Patrick's Day is a celebration of genocide, just like the Protestant Thanksgiving Day is and the Catholic Christopher Columbus Day is. Celebrating Patricius is like celebrating Stalin or Hitler, since Patricius genocided hundreds, thousands, if not 6 million native Irish people if they did not convert to Christianity. When many Irish Celtic pagans refused to convert to Christianity, then the darker side of Patricius is revealed. An estimated 6 million Irish Celtic pagans died at the hands of St. Patricius and Christianity. People were starved to death, tied to stakes and left to die, hog-tied and then thrown in the ocean, okay, to drown. Right? They were starved to death, tied to stakes, starved on the stakes, hog-tied, thrown in the ocean. Julius Caesar, what he said about the Druids, because you need to know about something about the Druids. Who are these horrible people that need to be driven, you know, who are these snakes that need to be driven from Ireland? Well, the Druids, according to Julius Caesar, usually hold aloof from war and do not pay war taxes with the rest. They are excused from military service and exempt from all liabilities. Tempted by these great rewards, many young men assemble of their own motion to receive their training. Many are sent by parents and relatives. Report says that in the schools of the Druids they learned by heart a great number of verses, and therefore some persons remain 20 years in training, and they do not think it's proper to commit these utterances, these verbal, to writing, to the written word, although in almost all other matters and in their private and public accounts they make use of Greek letters. I believe that they have adopted the practice for two reasons. One, that they do not wish the rule to become common property, nor those who learn the rule to rely on writing and so neglect the cultivation of the memory. And in fact, it usually does happen that the assistance of writing tends to relax the diligence of the student in the actions of the memory. The cardinal doctrine which they seek to teach is that souls do not die, but after death pass from one to another, and this belief, as the fear of death is thereby cast aside, they hold to be the greatest incentive to valor. Caesar, the Gallic War, chapter 6, 13 to 14. Celtic Druidism is a science. It wasn't even a religion, okay? So it was a way of life. Celtic Druidism was the study of the relationships between opposites, summer and winter, men and women, consciousness and unconsciousness, force and matter. Some of the main tenets of Celtic Druidism are these 10 points. Number 1, every action has a consequence that must be observed, and you must be prepared to compensate for your actions if required. Number 2, all life is sacred and are responsible for seeing that this standard is upheld. All life is sacred. That's what the Druids believe. Okay? You do still live in society and are bound by its rules. Number 4, work with high standards. Number 5, make an honest living. Number 6, be a good host as well as a good guest. Number 7, that was 6. Number 7, take care of yourself. Health was held in high esteem among the Celts. Celtics, anyways, the Celts. I don't know. So much that a person could be fined for being grossly overweight due to lack of care. Serve your community. 8. Number 9, maintain a healthy balance of the spiritual and mundane. Nietzsche writes, ethical and self-respecting Druids did nothing without being properly schooled, aware of the consequences ahead of time. They knew that when it was appropriate to visit the other world, they immerse themselves in the spiritual as well as when it was appropriate to be fully in this world. Number 10, uphold the truth, starting with yourself. Number 11, be sure in your convictions, particularly when judging or accusing someone, but also when debating. Ask yourself, are you really sure? Do you really know that this is the case? One part of the Druid class were the bards. And the bards, it was their job to remember all of the history of the Druidic people and the Celtic. The Celtic people did not rely on a written language because they memorized the songs and poetry of the bards. The Irish believed that history was very important, for if you didn't remember what had happened in the past, you couldn't safely plan for the future. Druidic priests were the keepers of the knowledge of earth and spirits. It was their responsibility to learn the spirit world in order to keep people in harmony with everybody else. Druidic priests were also the doctors and the psychiatrists. So it wasn't just a religion for the Druids. Druidism and the Celtics were a scientific people in addition to the religion.